Hello. Welcome everyone to the December edition of our Etc. Artist Interviews. As many of you know, these talks complement the online and in-person portrait and life drawing classes that we run at Draw Brighton, and they provide an insight into the working processes and career progressions of practicing artists. Thank you as well to all of our paying Patreon supporters who make these talks possible and allow us to make them free for everyone to attend. We'll be sharing this afterwards on our YouTube, and we do encourage everyone to go back and have a look at some of the wonderful talks we've had from past artists that you'll be able to find on there. Now, today I'm going to be speaking to the artist Chloe Barnes. Chloe's an artist based in southeast London. By her own description, she creates figurative monotypes that explore identity, sexuality, the psyche, and the experiences of women, including herself. And her work's been exhibited at the Royal Society, the Royal Scottish Academy, and the Royal Society of British Artists Bicentennial exhibition. She's also been recipient of a number of prestigious grants, prizes, and bursaries that you can find on her website. And most recently, spoiler for those that aren't up to date, Chloe was named the winner of Sky Portrait Artist of the Year 2025. Congratulations, Chloe, firstly. May I switch over to your screen just so you have a chance to say hi?
Go for it. Hi. It's really weird
Hi.
seeing myself on screen.
It's so lovely to have you here. Thank you for agreeing to do this talk.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for having me. It's really a pleasure.
And shall I jump straight into having a look at some of the images you've kindly prepared for us?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Fantastic. Well, welcome to today's etc. talk. So I'm going to just click through to the first image that you've prepared for us and tell us about what's going on here.
Yeah, so this stuff is obviously a little different to what I do now, or what people have seen me do now. But these are some of the, I was like first monotypes, or when I was first kind of exploring monoprinting. So it's a different process where I use like silk screens, so screen printing,
Uh-huh.
and I was first introduced to it at college, with a really lovely tutor who, through like life drawing, he was like, you should try turning your life drawings and seeing and making silk screen monotypes from them. And then when I went to university, I kind of dipped in and out of different styles and different mediums, and at the time I was like, oh, I'm not really sure how I can, like, I love monoprinting, but I'm not really sure how I can push it or bring something new to it. Um, and during my undergrad, I did illustration, and I kind of I went back to monoprinting, and I was like,
Mhm.
okay, so I can maybe try digitally collaging them. And so these ones on the two on the right, each image is probably made up of six, seven, eight different monoprints that I made. And I was kind of bringing in different textures and trying to create more illustrative work that was narrative based from them. But yeah, very colourful, very different to the monochromatic stuff that I do now. But these are
Mhm.
probably the kind of like first ways I was thinking how I can push monoprinting further.
And was there a reason why you picked illustration rather than, say, fine art for your BA?
Yeah, I think I've always loved kind of storytelling.
Mhm.
Um, and I don't know, I also loved kind of like portraiture, but I didn't want to do like just portraits. I kind of liked that narrative idea in my head and bring something more to it. And an illustration as kind of an area is super broad, so I can still explore portraiture, but also narrative and storytelling, as well as lots of different mediums. Whereas like a lot of the fine art friends I knew kind of stuck very heavily with one medium, and I wasn't sure what was kind of my thing yet. And I really wanted to explore that, which is why I did illustration.
Mhm. And the printmaking side, I guess a lot of people are going to associate printmaking with being able to produce multiples, but you've really kind of focused in on monoprinting on sort of a single method of kind of making a single image. Is there a reason why you think that appealed to you?
Um, so monoprinting, I think it's really down to the level of excitement I get. So I have done kind of like painting and tried oil painting, and I don't know, it's something about the time pressure and not really sure how it's going to turn out that when it does go really well, you get really excited. And I remember being in my print studio at university and literally running around and be like, oh my God, this turned out amazing. Or I don't really know how this came out, but I love it. And when something did go well, I got that really adrenaline feeling and almost like the high of doing that. Um, and like it feeds a lot into kind of like emotion and just being kind of really focusing on a moment and seeing if it works and yeah, just going from there. And I just love it.
I love that. Monoprinting is thrill seeking.
Yeah, yeah. And don't get me wrong, like so many things can go wrong. And I have many thrown away monoprints that were just failures or what I considered not successful in what I was trying to capture. But yeah, and also with monoprinting, there or just printmaking in general, there are marks that you wouldn't necessarily be able to recreate through any other medium.
Mhm.
And you see that with etching and spit bite and these different forms of mark making. And yeah, I love the process of what you can achieve. Yeah, which is exciting.
And am I right that your MA was sort of focused on more experimental processes?
Yeah, so I studied in Bristol and then decided to do the masters in multidisciplinary printmaking
Hmm.
with the idea of like, okay, so I love monoprinting. This is what I want to do. And kind of felt like with this idea in my head is like I kind of want to push it even more and see what I can do. Um, and so the course that I decided to do was very good for that because it had multiple different departments. It was a very close-knit team at the same time. Um, and yeah, it was good to kind of pull on different technicians and just discuss processes.
Brilliant, thank you. Sorry, I've distracted you from talking about your work as well here.
It's all right. If it's like most printmakers just love talking about processes and everything, and that will definitely feed in and out of this talk, I feel.
Should we click through to the next slide?
Hmm. Yeah. So when I did my or started my master's, um, the one thing that I didn't necessarily love as much from the silkscreen monotypes was that, well, the silkscreen monotypes can be very graphic and can be quite flat. And I kind of like, and whilst it's kind of abstracted still and still kind of fragmented, I kind of missed some of the painterly marks and different tones I could achieve. So these two are some of the first monotypes I made using an etching press. So yeah, with this one and what people might have seen from the Sky Arts competition is that I have a plate and I kind of ink it up, and with these I was using scrim to kind of wipe it away, and it's very high contrast. But yeah, these are the first few kind of monoprints that I made at the beginning,
So
which I
this
think
was quite a subtractive process, is that right?
yeah, and yeah, so like with this kind of like form of monoprinting, you have like additive or approaches and subtractive approaches. And these you start by just inking up the plate entirely, so just coating it in one whole layer of ink, and then you just wipe away. So you're subtracting the ink then. Um, yeah, which means you get this really dense layer of kind of like ink and black in this case. So it's very dramatic, which I think is really cool, and it allows you to look more into tone and tonal values. Yeah.
And there's still a sort of sense of narrative coming through, particularly on the right-hand image with these figures around the fire. Like what's informing the imagery here?
So that I mean that one in particular was to do with the guys I used to live with in Bristol. Um, and they're lovely, crazy bonkers. And it just happened that any time we had a fire pit in the garden, they would kind of just start stripping off their clothes and dancing around the fire in sort of like a very primitive way. Um, and I would take obviously silly photos, but from it, it felt very primitive and spooky. And I just like the energy that kind of came through. And I think modern printing is great at capturing that energy. And because it you can't be super detailed and defined, like having sketchy, painterly, blurry areas can really help lend itself to the energy and yeah, just capturing that in general.
Yeah, thank you. And shall I click through to our next one?
Yeah, please. Cool. Yeah. So yeah, leading on from there, I was like, okay, so kind of want to have a bit more kind of tonal values coming through. And then I was starting to think more about like the context behind my work and what I wanted to explore. And I don't know, I've always kind of like loved witches and that sense of like female kind of like empowerment from them. And the one on the right is like kind of like children, childhood, and that's where the kind of like the identity comes in. And this is like where more of like the narrative also feeds into it, where I don't know, because it's just like one frame, it does kind of lead you wondering, kind of like what is happening, where are they going, and what are they doing? And it for me, I loved kind of the idea that this is, oh, for me, it's like exploring curiosity and for these like kids that are in the monotype, it's kind of like, yeah, who are they? What's their identity? Um, I like Paula Rego is a massive inspiration to me, and I feel yeah, I love her work, and it's slightly spooky, and it just question or allows me to question a lot on what is going on and feeds into your own personal narratives as well.
Is it important for you for that to remain a question in the kind of viewer's mind to sort of not answer too many of those things in the image?
Yeah. Um, Obviously, I think everyone's going to resonate with something differently, but I don't know. My experience is going to be very different to others, but I like the idea that someone can just figure out for themselves or resonate with something independently, and it doesn't
Mhm.
have to be super defined where I don't know, like I'm telling you this is happening. It's yeah, it's kind of more to like your own personal journey and experience that I think I'm really intrigued by. And then in some of my later works as well, it's how you emotionally resonate with something.
Mhm.
Yeah. But yeah, here I was just exploring more of different tonal values you can get. And yeah, so mark making really like attracted me to this
Yeah.
process even more.
And physically, I mean, what kind of tools are you using to kind of create some of these marks?
So I normally have like a whole toolbox of things. So I have a mixture of like hog hair brushes, synthetics like smooth brushes, cotton buds, rollers, different coarse and fine kind of scrim, which is like this like cloth that I used to wipe with. So it can be very like scratchy and or I can get really like smooth areas. And then some of my later works, you can really see like roller marks, which I quite like because it's kind of like a reminder that this is a like a printmaking kind of medium that I'm using, and it's kind of abstracting things at the same time.
Mhm.
I think it's kind of fun.
I think that that's one of the things that seems to have really appealed to a lot of people that watched the Sky Portrait Artist episodes with you on. So just seeing all of those different sort of physical processes rather than just being a brush and paint, actually kind of seeing you coming in with the roller and then sort of removing as well, and sort of the back and forth. It feels kind of playful and experimental.
Yeah, no, I really loved it with like with Mary Berry when she was watching me. You can tell she's like, what are you doing? And I had this like whole like tool set in front of me. And I think she mentioned about like the roller and she's like, this is such like a weird or like not weird, but non-traditional way of making an image. Um, And I don't think many people have really seen it before unless you're a printmaker. So I think it's just an interesting thing to highlight.
But you mentioned Paul Arago. Are there many other kind of big influences for you in your work?
Yeah, so Paul Arago is one. I really love kind of like Tracey Emin for her just being very authentic in herself and the emotion that she explores through in her work as well, I think is really impactful. And then also I do love kind of like Egon Schiele, Francis Bacon, Edvard Munch at the same time. So really kind of this expressionist artists where emotion is at kind of like the heart of what they do. And also like I love like Degas kind of initial like monotypes that you might see in the British Museum. And I remember seeing it for the first time and I'm like, this is like the sort of vibe or feel that I want to get in my work also.
Mhm.
But yeah, emotion is the big part of my thing.
Excellent. That's great. And channeling that into mark making.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So my whole like master's dissertation was actually researching, investigating how monoprinting specifically kind of lends itself well to produce portraits that is emotionally resonant. And it's all about kind of like how you're able to work intuitively and spontaneously. And also the marks you make aren't super definitive. And it's the fact that it's unpredictable allows the artist to decide whether the final outcome achieves the emotion that you're looking to portray without over defining it, because with over defining you have the risk of losing the emotion at the same time.
Okay. And is that affected by the kind of reversal of the image as well, where actually what you're seeing on the plate isn't how it will finally express itself on the paper?
Yeah, I think for me, knowing that it's a mirrored image also helps me to let go from some of that feeling of being too controlled in my mark making.
Hmm.
And it has that kind of subconscious element where like I know it's not gonna necessarily appear how it initially is on the plate. Um, and I think as the artist, you can decide whether to accept or reject the final outcome, which is why I had like a pile of rejected prints,
Hmm.
because it didn't capture what I was looking to explore. But yeah, no, I just think it's really interesting. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Oh, sorry, I clicked through. There we are. Um, to move forward to, and so tell me about what's going on in these images.
Hmm. So this is when I was exploring more like the personal side or what gets me or what ideas gets me excited when I'm producing work. And it kind of came down to kind of really personal kind of subjects, including kind of body confidence and self-esteem, and not feeling good in my body. So these images was just some of the first few monotypes I did to explore that. So initially I went to the photography suite in my studio, um, took a bunch of like self-portrait photos and then just worked from those. But I really liked kind of how with these kind of like the ink kind of like drips and kind of it's like it's bleeding in some way. And like the first and second image, the first obviously the plate and the second is the printed outcome. And the printed outcome um, looks very different. So some of the ink dried on the plate, and I don't know, technically it might not have been considered a successful print. So I like seeing the kind of comparison between the two. But also the third image is this, I worked from the same photo, but for me it kind of shows you how each attempt can be very different from one another. And at each new day of painting and printing can bring a whole different feel to your work, which is why I kind of describe it as kind of reflecting on your monotype afterwards and being like, okay, so did this actually capture what I was maybe trying to look for in my work?
Mhm. And you were saying that this was sort of exploring self-image. Like, did making the work itself sort of change or sort of reframe how you were thinking of yourself?
Yeah, I mean, within the process of painting, it's very reflective.
Mhm,
And also, like when I was looking at like my photo, it's really interesting to be more like, okay, so I'm seeing it more in an artistic way, and the fact that it's very tactile as well. In what I do, it's actually I find it quite healing, and it allowed me to feel more connected with myself. And even though I still battle with these like feelings and emotions, I think with each kind of self-portrait I do seem to make, it's me feeling more grounded and feeling more connected. And
mhm,
yeah, it just allows me to channel negative emotion into something that I actually feel very proud of.
mhm.
But
Thanks, that's a great answer.
yeah.
For come through.
Yeah.
These are some really powerful images. Yeah, so tell me more about these.
Yeah. So these are along the same theme. And I had the idea because of what I do is very obviously mark making based. But also I wanted to have or explore the idea that my feelings towards my body is very up and down. Hence, kind of like these three figures, we go from one that's kind of like on the ball on the ground to the third one standing up. So each one was an attempt, starting from obviously at the top left corner, and you go one, two, and then three, four on the bottom. And then the fifth one, which is the big one, is like the final piece where I was like, this captures what I was looking for. Um, but with like mono printing, you can only really get a feel of kind of how to work or how to adapt your next print by just doing these multiple attempts. So even though I'm not spending 50 to 100 hours on a kind of one single painting, like each attempt I've done here probably took me nearly 8 hours to paint, plus printing on top of it. And each time I make an attempt, I'm learning something new. And I'm internally figuring out, say, what can I do to adapt for the next time to form something that might emotionally resonate with me a bit more. So yeah, so I think it's quite interesting going from kind of a smaller study, which is the top left one, just to stripping it back to black and white, to then slowly adding in color to it as well, to the final thing.
And it must have been quite physically intense to be working over, say, an 8 hour day because you can't just leave because the ink will dry. So you've
Mm.
just got to stick with it. Like, is that quite an intense process, intense place to be in?
Yeah, it is. And I think I have to, in some ways, be in like a mentally and physically good place to produce something that I'm happy with. If I know that I'm tired, I just know that I'm probably gonna crash halfway through, and then it probably won't end up as what I want it to be, and then I get very frustrated and start again. Um, so it's a very intense thing. But I say the spontaneity and actually that time pressure as well allows me to be really expressive in my mark making. So it's kind of that kind of like double-edged sword where yeah, actually don't know if double-edged sword was the right word to use, but it's the yeah, I love it, but also it's very intense. So it's finding the balance between the two.
You hit on something really interesting there. I just wondered if I could have your opinion on something because this is really, I think, sort of undeniably very emotionally powerful work to look at.
Mhm.
And you're obviously describing your MA thesis and sort of exploring emotion in visual art. But then you were also saying that you've got to be in a good place in order to kind of spend 8 hours on a single image. And I think sometimes there are sort of um, cinematic portrayals of artists making emotionally powerful work where they are perhaps sometimes falsely portrayed as being in the emotional state for the entire time in which they're making the work. Um, and I wondered what your relationship is between the emotion you're trying to convey in a piece of work and the emotion you're actually feeling throughout the process of making it, and whether those two things are different, whether you've sort of got to be feeling the same thing you're trying to put across, or whether they're separate.
Yeah, so I don't know. At the beginning of producing a piece, I always have that emotion in mind. And actually, some of my favorite pieces is when I'm actually feeling that exact emotion in at the beginning. So we'll skip to it later on, but like the portrait, the self-portrait I made for my entry to Sky Portrait Artist of the Year, that was within a week of a breakup, and I was definitely feeling that emotion of like grief and sadness and loss of identity. And like I knew I wanted to make a piece with these emotions in mind, but I was really feeling it. And I think it's really raw to have that emotion and kind of keep it through the whole painting and printing process. um but yeah, but with this one in particular, obviously I had those emotions, but kind of they would come and go, and it's not like I'm in a state of I'm not feeling great for the entire 8 hours. But yeah, I always have kind of like the emotion in my head and trying to stay true to that, even if I'm not physically feeling it in that moment.
Mhm. Oh, thank you. That's again another great answer. Um, and so tell me about these images. These are amazing.
Thank you. So this is the or the last piece I made in my Atalanta series that I made on my master's. Um, so yeah, so this is kind of weaving more narrative back into my work a bit, and for this project, I kind of related to Atlanta's story, and to kind of like almost like channel those emotions as well. I like physically dressed up as Atalanta. So I found this I don't know how old this dress was, but I found this kind of decorative dress in the charity shop, and I kind of like bought a blonde wig, and I bought like a very shoddy boar-esque mask from Amazon. Um and I was like posing with my housemates at the time, getting reference photos, and wanted to kind of create almost like this more of like a narrative through the triptych. And yeah, I think it, for me, it's kind of like I would love to do more triptychs going forwards, and yeah, bring more in that narrative element. Yeah.
Is that so that you can sort of stage the images as a kind of linear narrative to be sort of viewed through each one, or just having the three image format just works well for you?
I think I find it quite, or the idea quite interesting of like showing different states, yeah, or different perspectives, and it instead of just having a single image, um, I think it allows the viewer to kind of interpret what might be going on throughout each scene as well. But yeah, with these and kind of like taking the photos, yeah, it just allow me to develop more kind of complex imagery and
Mhm.
taking it beyond just a kind of like a singular kind of like portrait at the same time. Yeah.
Great. Have you got any particular ideas you're working on at the moment, or would that be hush hush anyway?
So I kind of wanted to do, well, I think for the last few years I've had a few projects in mind. There's like a I think it's 1900s, or like there's a book called The Yellow Wallpaper, which I read in high school during English literature, and I loved, I really resonated with the story, but it kind of it just showed like a woman who went through quite a hard time with like mental health. Um, and the idea that this kind of like wallpaper of the room that she was in kind of almost was like a symbol to her decline in mental health over time. Um, but I think it would be interesting to show in a more sensitive way, kind of, or have portraits of like women or people and weaving patterns into it. So have, yeah, it's very vague, and in my head it's I'm not sure how it's going to play out, but I want to do something along those lines of pattern of and abstracting the figure and abstracting portraits, to also see how what it might look like, but also how it might resonate with different people.
It's exciting. Watch out for that then in that case.
Yeah, it's been in my head for the last, I think, 3 years or so. So it'll be interesting to see how it will play out.
It's always very different once it actually makes contact with paper, isn't it?
Hmm.
And then that's the exciting bit, then seeing that bouncing back and forth between the image in your head and what's actually there on the page.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Um, Dee said that she really loves the yellow wallpaper too.
Oh yeah, I saw that little comment pop up and I was like, yes, people know what I'm talking about.
I mean, I wonder if I could just throw in one of Gemini's questions actually, because it seems pertinent to this. Gemini's asked, "What's coming into your mind before you make a new artwork? Are you thinking about observation, composition, narrative as kind of primary factors?"
Yeah, sometimes I think particularly with like self-portraits, either like I might have like a strong emotion or not feeling great. And normally I would make a self-portrait during times when I'm feeling particularly lost and I just need to like reflect on myself. So normally those self-portraits would stem from not great emotions, but as a release to hopefully feel better from that. When I'm working on like a longer project over a period of time, I constantly try to go back to the question of what emotion am I actually trying to explore? And sometimes I forget that question and I'll get really frustrated and be like, oh, it's just not working out. And I'll get my friend to remind me and be like, but like if emotion's part of your work, what key thing are you trying to express here? And yeah, going back to that really helps. And then yeah, from then obviously composition, stuff like composition, um, and narrative kind of comes after comes after that. And it's something that I learned from illustration is like composition's great because it's a tool that allows you to draw your eye across kind of like the scene and across the page. And it's like a journey, a small journey in itself. So yeah, so I start with emotion and then I think about composition and everything afterwards.
Thank you. On to the next.
Mm, yeah, so these I made these last year and it was kind of coming out of a bit of a slump where I'm like, I'm not really sure what I'm doing. And I think so I finished my master's in January 2023 and then I moved to London. I had all this kind of like pressure. It's like, oh, I don't know what I should be doing. Um, and I just kind of wanted to go back to basics and just have a bit of fun and almost like go back to childhood where you're just making art because you want to make art and you love it. Um, so like with this kind of like mini series that I made, um, four of them are like the children that are present are from kind of found film photography, which is some of the medium that I like to work from and reference because it kind of like I don't know who these people are, but it allows me to think and also impose my own narrative onto them. And then the top left one of the two girls is actually me and my sister. Um, so I think it's for me it was kind of looking back to childhood and reconnecting with that, and also the idea of curiosity as well and identity. And then with all the backgrounds of all these pieces, they're all places that I've been to. So so I've had all these photos. I kind of digitally collaged all these kind of like children to make these scenes, and then I made monotypes from them as well. But I just thought they were quite fun and kind of spooky. And I do kind of love it when people come to my studio and they're like, they're a bit weird, not weird, but like kind of dark and kind of spooky and scary. And I kind of like that in some ways.
Did it help you settle into London as well?
Yeah, I think so. I was in Bristol for 8 years and I love Bristol. And I wanted to come to London because I wanted to build my network and build opportunities. But yeah, I went from having quite a tight-knit group to not knowing many people at all in London. But
Mhm.
the printmaking community in general is very open. And having a print workshop that I went to every week just allowed me to very quickly form bonds with different artists. And I feel very lucky for that.
Brilliant. That's wonderful. What's the studio you go to?
So I'm based down in Thameside.
Hmm.
which is towards Woolwich. So I have so there's the Thameside Print Studio there, and then I also have like an independent studio in the same building. So because I am painting my plates for up to 8 hours, I like to have that as my little space where I don't feel like people are kind of like looking over my shoulder every 2 seconds. And then when I'm done with the painting, I normally just bring my plate through, print it, and then yeah, then leave again. But it's nice to be able to
Back
chat.
to you.
Yeah. Yeah, so these two pieces I made in collaboration with a charity called Mortal and Strong. So this is where more like female empowerment kind of comes into it a bit more. But Mortal and Strong is a really amazing charity where they're trying to raise awareness on kind of different female health conditions. So they have women who we just call like voices. So they have a podcast where they kind of like talk about what condition they might have gone through, whether that might be like cancer or like endometriosis or mental health. So these different conditions. And then after the podcast did a photography campaign. And then their last bit of the campaign was to bring in artists to kind of produce artworks in response to each woman. These are two that I made. So the one on the left is Trish, the one on the right is Michelle, and both amazing women. And yeah, I remember like I wanted to get involved in the charity anyway because I just thought it was really empowering. But I was listening to the podcast whilst painting my plates and feeling really connected to them, even though I hadn't met them in person at this point. Um, but I kind of like I love the boldness and also the feeling of like strength and resilience that kind of comes through each portrait, despite having gone through something really kind of like hard and traumatic at the same time.
And I mean, it feel obviously there's a more of a sense of portraiture in these, but then obviously a lot of narrative and meaning and emotion behind that. Do you feel like this was shifting towards portraiture, or is that the wrong way to phrase it?
Yeah, I think yeah, these definitely fall more into like portraiture, less of the narrative side that I also like to explore as well. Um, but it was more stripped back in a way that it purely felt about the emotion and that I wanted to portray with both these women. And yeah, and for me, it was this show of strength from both of them. And yeah, having both of them as like the subjects of each portrait just felt right. So like some other artists kind of went a bit more abstract and did something a bit more decorative or made something a bit more symbolic, where I really wanted to focus on these two women in particular.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just click through to the next.
So at the beginning of this year, I was very lucky to be nominated as an awardee for the Hesketh Hubbard Society in London. So they're an old kind of like life drawing society in the Moore Gallery, and I was one of 3/4 people who was allowed to kind of come to these life drawing classes for free. And in my head, I was like, I feel like if I was able to work from life a lot more and paint plates from life, I could actually capture something a lot more expressive or a bit different. And I think, I mean, I brought my plates to the life drawing, and I had people being like, "What are you doing? This is not charcoal, or this is not like the standard medium." And yeah, I had a lot of looks, but I think people were really intrigued to see what I was doing. And actually, through doing this practice, it kind of like showed me that actually I can kind of capture form better than if I was working from a photo reference,
Mhm,
which is what I was predominantly working from before. I also really believe that if I worked from life, then I was able to form more of like an emotional connection and work from that as well.
mhm. And is it difficult then to get the plates back to actually print it?
Yeah. Yeah, so the plates that I brought along were, I think, 60 by 80 centimeters. So I had this big black folder that I kind of guarded with my life. on the tube and then on the train back to my studio. So that was a bit of an hour-long trek. But it worked.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
yeah, so they were really exciting to do. Yeah, very long evenings, but I was very happy that I was got to experiment with this.
Yeah, how long a sitting were these from?
So the life drawing classes are 2 hours long. So yeah, both of these kind of portraits were done within the 2 hours, and then it'd be an hour trek back to my studio and a bit of setting up, and then probably print it the next half an hour to an hour. But yeah, the physical painting was a 2 hour period.
Is that Scallywag and Sapphire on the right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. We occasionally used to get visits from Scallywag at the studio in Brighton, which is nice. And Sapphire, obviously.
Yeah, both of them are so lovely, and yeah, it was so kind of great to paint a dog as well. And it was good prep for the Mary Berry painting I did in the semis.
My goodness, yes. That was extra challenge, I think, there. Would I guess we're starting to edge into that with the self-portrait, which has become so prevalent as your Sky Arts entry piece.
Yeah, yes, yeah, so yeah, the self-portrait um is what I made kind of shortly after my breakup with my ex. And he's an artist sort of as well. And he was like, you should actually make a series of portraits of like him and of us. And we ended very amicably. So I did two portraits of him and one of me. The process was is very surreal because you are looking at each other for an extended period of time, but it was very reflective and actually revealed a lot about the emotion and kind of, yeah, the grief and the identity that I was kind of trying to grasp since the breakup.
So did you make the portrait of him from life?
Yeah, yeah, both of these are from life as well. Um, yeah, most of our friends and family are kind of like, why would you do this to yourself? But yeah, yeah, I feel like they're very impactful, and I feel very grateful that although this was really hard to do, it was very in almost like kind of like, I don't know, allowed us to reflect on our relationship, even though it came to an end, and it was kind of healing in some ways.
Thank you for sharing that. So then we get on to Sky Arts.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, when I was applying for Sky Arts, like I wanted to apply for a very long time. I was a massive fan of the show, and I was actually contacted last year to see if I wanted to apply, and I did apply. Didn't get through to the show, but I thought I'd apply again this year, and I was very lucky to get through. Um, but obviously, when you're applying, one of the questions you're asked is like, so if you get through, are you going to do anything different to what you present? And it's like I knew I wouldn't be able to get a really big etching press through to the competition at that stage. And yeah, so I was like, I can produce paintings on aluminium. And that mainly kind of came across because uh like when I painted plates, so like Hesketh Hubbard, and even in my university, they were like, these are kind of like paintings themselves. And it's very different to have a like a metallic surface as the background. But I did actually love them as final objects themselves. So yeah, I kind of pitched that as like my technique for the heats, and kind of like had my all my like fingers crossed that people would receive it well, because it is something that's a bit out of the traditional realms of what you would normally expect.
Mhm.
Mm.
How did you find the experience as well of being there in front of the cameras? Did it feel comfortable for you?
Oh, I yeah, don't normally like the cameras. Normally, I quite like the
Were
safety.
you able to ignore them?
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the things that I really tried to do was just try to zone out from them as much as possible. So for most of it, I just had my earphones in, and I tried to get as comfortable as possible. So I took off my shoes, um, and try to ignore what was behind me. It's such a surreal experience, and I think every artist would be like, don't really like doing this, but here we are. And yeah, I mean, and it's a lot of fun as well. I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed bonding with the other artists. But I wouldn't choose to go in front of the camera again, I don't think. But yeah, I'm very lucky, and obviously I did well. So yeah, feel very honoured from the experience.
And how did you find talking to the sitters about seeing themselves represented? Because that must have been amazing for them to suddenly see the easels spin around and see the work on the other side. Did you get to talk to them much about it?
Not specifically about that. I did love seeing their reactions to to when you see the whole head like glance around the room of what everyone's produced. And it's yeah, I think what's amazing that is that each artist obviously brings their own visual language and way of working and interpretation of how they view them. Um, and I think yeah, it's just really interesting to see how others see you. But yeah, I mean all the sitters seem to love it and just really enjoy the process. Yeah.
And then halfway through all of that, you decided to do an oil painting course. Is that right?
Yeah. Um, so at the beginning of the year as well, I got some funding. So I applied for the funding to see what I can do to kind of push monoprinting further. And monoprinting falls in between like painting and print. It's a painterly print. Um, so I thought, okay, so I'm going to go to an oil painting course, which happened to fall in between the semis and the heats and the semis. Um, but yeah, on this course, which is at UAL, I just wanted to learn more traditional techniques. And I kind of really fell in love with kind of like grisaille painting. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, so I'm sorry if it's wrong. But then also glazing on top of that as well, which is something I thought was really interesting because I can almost like maintain that mark making underneath while starting to bring more colours into the monotypes. So I thought this had a lot of potential and it was a really interesting thing or technique that I wanted to explore further.
Hmm. And so I guess if we click through in the portrait of Brian Cox, you were starting to actually bring that in. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. So the one on the left, so that's actually the final monotype that I made. And then since the finals, so it looks different because in my studio I was like, okay, I just want to play around more with like watercolor and pastel. And then I was bringing more colors into that. And then the one on the right, which is what I made when I had some time between when I before I started Hannah's portrait. So with that one, that was I just did a monotype in kind of like brown etching ink onto oil paper, which is I think Archer's Hahnemühle paper. Um, but that paper allows you then to add glazing on top of it, which I thought was really interesting. Because yeah, you can still see the mark making underneath whilst bringing in these colors on top of it.
And so does that mean that so you make the monoprint, you print it onto paper, and that has to dry fully before you glaze over the top? Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. So I was still working with, so I did soak the paper, and soaking the paper just softens the fibers, which allows you to pick up more ink. And that has to dry. And then the ink obviously has to dry as well before you're at the glazing. So I was glazing with liquid. Um, and the colours that I was adding was with etching ink, not oil paint, which are similar actually in terms of the medium, but etching ink is a lot stiffer. So yeah, it's oil based as well, has all the pigments and everything. So yeah, I've been obviously consistently painting with etching ink throughout my process.
Was it scary to be trying completely new processes or experimenting with new processes whilst being on TV and whilst being recorded doing all of this?
Yeah. So I think I was just increasing my risk more and more and more throughout the whole thing. And I don't know, I maybe we should just stayed with with what I knew. But also I was really excited. I'd be like, look, I'm trying this new thing. Like, and yeah, with my printmaker friends, they were getting really excited as something that they can maybe also explore, try as well at some point. Um, yeah, I just thought it was fun. And I just wanted to do it.
I think you've got people really fired up about printmaking as well, which is wonderful.
Yeah, yeah, I love processes and kind of the whole context behind it as well. And technique is really important. But there's just so much potential with printmaking and what you can achieve. And sometimes it's, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think printmaking sometimes is seen as like a lesser craft or a medium because the idea that you can create multiples. And I know I do monotypes, which is one-offs, but I think, yeah, sometimes it's not as seen as highly as painting or drawing. And I'm like, no, it's amazing. There's so many things you can do with it. Yeah.
Wonderful. Gemini's also asked whether there's a technique in drawing sort of pastel pencil charcoal that you would bring into your monotypes.
Yeah, so whilst trying to keep kind of the mark making I make in mono printing very integral to the final image, sometimes I might use like the pastels to highlight certain lines, areas. Occasionally, I might use it to correct like a mark that might distract from the final image. Um, yeah, and adding a bit of like definition. But with like a portrait I've made of my housemate, I didn't want any harsh pastel lines there as but I wanted a bit of a glow. So I'd add pastel and then diffuse it with a soft brush as well to get more of a hint of colour kind of coming through. Um yeah, just like to play around and experiment.
It's exciting. And is this the what you were describing with your housemate?
Yeah, unfortunately the colours don't necessarily kind of pop through and it's only when you see it in person. But yeah, the final commission that I chose was the one on the left, and actually in his hair there is very subtle bits of green pastel that come through, and then also in the plants as well, you can see some of the green pastel. But I used like blue pastel as well to highlight bits in his jumper and just to make some areas a little bit um higher in contrast and to pop a little bit more. But yeah, on the when I was making this kind of commission piece, we had like 3 days to make it. And I wanted to give myself the best kind of like chance of producing a good print. So I was like, okay, so it's 3 days. I'm gonna make three monotypes. Which is exhausting because I was painting and filming at the same time. And the one I went through in the end was actually the first monotype I made. And that was I was painting him from life. Um I think actually like so the last two were painted from photo reference. And for me it feels very evident the difference in mark making that came across each one. And actually just working from life allows me to pick up subtle forms of like form and that three dimension that I think I lost a little bit in the second and third attempt. But yeah, doing those last two attempts allow me to be like really confident in the first one I made and yeah,
Mhm.
feel really good that I was bringing my best to the finals.
Would you want them to ever be seen like this with kind of all three versions, or would you rather just have the single selected best piece of work shown?
No, I actually love the idea of showing them kind of all together because I think it does highlight the need for attempts and learning from each piece and what can go wrong, but also what can go well with what I do.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, because I don't strive to be perfect in it. Um, and it would never be perfect in my head versus what's printed. But showing this process allows me to talk about what I do and why I do what I do. I think it's really interesting to see the different attempts and how they can look very different at the same time.
Thanks. Um, and then we've got your commission of Hannah Fry, who I'm a massive fan of, so it must have been wonderful. How was she?
She is the coolest, loveliest person I think I've ever met. She was so enthusiastic, and I think where you had the crossover with the science and the arts, we were just kind of geeking out about kind of processes and what we were doing. And I think actually she mentioned in the show how it's like it feels very scientific and very like you've got like oil, water, solvents, materials coming into it. And yeah, I don't know, it really resonated with me because it did feel very scientific in some ways and very experimental in what I do. And I can see how like Hannah might be really interested in that as well. Because she's trying to figure out how or what I do and kind of how it works. And yeah, she seemed generally very interested, which I was very kind of like happy and felt very honored by.
And as you were making it, I mean, did she sort of interact with you a lot while she was actually sitting? How good a sitter was she? Was she patient?
She was very patient, but we just loved to chat,
Mhm.
which is very hard when you're trying to do your best study. And like in my head, it's like, I really just want to obviously capture likeness. But we were chatting so much and I was trying to go back and forth. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to prioritize like the chatting and getting to know her and connect that way. And going from there. But yeah, I mean, she was great. Yeah, I think it was a very kind of perfect sitting or partner to work with in this.
And the portrait's going to sit in the Royal Society, is that right?
Yeah, yeah. So it was hung last Tuesday. So Hannah was awarded the David Attenborough Award, and she gave a lecture, and that was when we had the public unveiling of the portrait as well.
How does it feel to have your work hung in such a prestigious environment? And for posterity, I mean, it's going to be there for the foreseeable future now.
Yeah, I mean, it's very surreal. It's very weird, but it's yeah, I just feel very lucky. And I know like Ty Shanchienberg, one of his paintings is there, and you have Hogarth and all these amazing artists as well. So I feel like it's in very good company. But yeah, it's very surreal. And they actually, I've just finished varnishing it, but they're gonna have the plate as well that I painted from. So normally I would clean my plate after I paint it and print it, but they asked if they can have it, and also from a research point of view, I thought it'd be nice for them to have as like a form of documentation of how this thing was made and trying to kind of generate more just knowledge and documentation on a medium that has historically been seen as very experimental and not very well researched or written about.
And I should say for everyone else, because I didn't appreciate this until you mentioned it, that you've brought some of your glazing into this portrait as well.
Yeah, yeah, this is where I think seeing it in person, you can actually see the subtle hints of color. But like in yeah, so this was done on oil paper as well. So I added kind of like orange glazing in her hair and kind of a pinky glazing as well. But yeah, I feel like you can only really appreciate it when you're in person, and that photos never do it justice. But yeah.
Um, And I should say, everyone, in our last couple of minutes, if anyone had any questions you wanted to ask, do feel free to pop them in the chat. But are we able to see this? Is it publicly available to visit?
Yeah, so I mean, during this week, from between like 3 and 5, you were able to just go up and just go and have a look. But I think they're very actually happy for people to come and look at that art collection. I think they would probably appreciate just a quick heads up. Um, but this piece is in the lobby, so it's actually very easy to access and see. But yeah, they're very happy for people to come and have a look at it.
Fantastic. And at the moment, you've got some work hanging in a group exhibition as well. Is that right?
Yeah, so after the semi-finals, a couple of them, so Courtney and Paulina, they really wanted to push this kind of like idea of doing a group show and just making most out of this really weird opportunity that we're all just experienced. Um, so yeah, so from that we have arranged a group show which is currently on at the moment until Sunday. And yeah, it's just nice to get everyone together again, but also show different styles of contemporary portraiture.
It's really nice to kind of hear there's such a kind of collegiate atmosphere as well in something that's kind of framed as a competition. That there's a nice sort of sense of sharing there and a non-competitive attitude perhaps outside of the film studio.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I saw them all first for the first time in months on Monday. And it was just like we're all just all good friends. And yeah, despite the competitive element, I think the main thing that just bonded us together was just how weird the experience was. And only those who have gone through it will understand. It's just odd and exciting and fun, but it's very out of the norm of what most would experience.
Well, thanks for giving us a bit of an insight into that whole experience as well, Chloe. I haven't had any further questions come in, so thank you everyone that's asked questions in there, but especially thank you, Chloe. Thank you so much for joining us and for introducing us to your work. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No, thank you for having me too. It was a lot of fun.
I'm going to take you off of spotlight there. I'll just pop myself back on for a moment. And I'm just going to share a link to Chloe's Instagram, just in case anyone that's here live would like to click through and find out a bit more about her work. And also just a link to Chloe's website as well. So I'll make sure I share this with the recording, which is going to go up in the next few days if anyone would like to come back and watch it or share it with anyone else that you think might appreciate it. Chloe, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an absolute joy. It's been really wonderful to hear about your process, and I'm really excited about the experiments that you're doing at the moment and everything that we might see in the future.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been such a pleasure. I really enjoyed it.